Something happened that nobody expected, something that would tear this frontier town apart and reveal who the real monsters were. Before we begin, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all started. The church bells rang hollow that morning. Lynn May stood in the back room of Red Hollow's only chapel, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror someone had propped against the wall. The dress wasn't hers. Nothing about today was hers. The ivory fabric hung loose on her small frame, borrowed from a woman 3 sizes larger who died in childbirth 2 winters back. Someone had safety pinned the waist. The pins were crooked. "Stop fidgeting," her father's voice came from the doorway. Thomas Carter looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Probably hadn't. The hollows under his eyes had hollows of their own. Lynn May's hand stilled against the fabric. She didn't turn around. "They're waiting," he said. "Let them wait." The silence stretched between them like a canyon. Outside, she could hear the murmur of the crowd. Red Hollow didn't get many weddings. They'd turned out in force for this one, not out of celebration, but curiosity, morbid fascination. They wanted to see the Carter girl get handed over to the mountain man. They wanted to witness the moment she became property. "May." Her father's voice cracked on her name. He never called her that anymore. "I need you to understand." "I understand perfectly." She met his eyes in the mirror. "You gambled, you lost, and I'm the payment." Thomas flinched. It wasn't supposed to go this way. How was it supposed to go? He had no answer for that. His hands twisted the brim of his hat, wringing it like he was trying to strangle something. Crow would have been worse. You have to believe that. When Victor Crow started circling, started making his intentions clear. "So you sold me to someone else first." Lynn May turned to face him directly now. "To a man they say killed his first wife. To someone even the sheriff won't ride out to check on. That's your idea of protecting me?" Rourke Hale paid the debt in full. Cash. No conditions. Her father's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Crow wouldn't have been so clean about it. Lynn May knew about Victor Crow. Everyone in the territory knew about Victor Crow. He owned half the land between here and the state line, and he took what he wanted. 3 months ago, he'd decided he wanted her. Started showing up at the general store when she was working, touching her hand when he took his change, talking about how a man of his position needed a proper wife, someone young enough to mold into shape. The memory made her skin crawl. But this was supposed to be better? Time's up. Constance Freely, the pastor's wife, appeared behind Thomas. She was a stout woman with kind eyes and a mouth that didn't match them. Everyone seated, Rourke's at the altar. She looked Lynn May up and down with something like pity. "Honey, you need some rouge. You're pale as a ghost." "I'm fine." "You're getting married, not buried. Try to look less like you're walking to the gallows." But that's exactly what this is, Lynn May thought. Constance fussed with her hair, pinning it back with clips that pulled too tight. Lynn May stood still and let her. There was no point in fighting. The contract was signed. The debt was paid. Rourke Hale had purchased her father's obligations, and apparently she came with them. There. Constance stepped back to admire her work. "Beautiful. Your mother would be proud." Lynn May doubted that. Her mother had died when she was 12, worked to death keeping the Carter household afloat while Thomas gambled away anything that wasn't nailed down. If she were alive to see this, she'd probably spit in his face. The organ started playing, some hymn Lynn May didn't recognize. "That's your cue." Constance handed her a bouquet of winter sage and dried flowers. They smelled like dust. "Head up, shoulders back, and smile for heaven's sake." Lynn May took the bouquet. She didn't smile. The walk down the aisle felt like miles. She'd been in this church exactly 4 times in her life. Once for her mother's funeral, once for Christmas service when she was 14, once when old Mrs. Henderson died and they needed extra hands to prepare the body, and now this. The pews were packed. Every face turned toward her, watching, judging, pitying. Sarah Mills, who ran the boarding house, had tears in her eyes. Deputy Bradford looked uncomfortable, like he knew he should be doing something but wasn't sure what. The Henley brothers sat in the back row, passing a flask between them. And at the front, waiting beside Pastor Freely, stood Rourke Hale. Lynn May's steps faltered. She'd seen him before, of course. Everyone had seen him. He came into town maybe 4 times a year, always alone, always silent. He'd buy supplies in bulk, flour, salt, ammunition, pay in cash, and disappear back into the mountains before anyone could work up the nerve to talk to him. But she'd never been this close. He was tall. That was the first thing that hit her. 6 foot something, broad across the shoulders in a way that suggested he'd spent his life hauling timber and wrestling the wilderness into submission. His hair was dark, shot through with gray at the temples, pulled back in a way that seemed more practical than stylish. His face was weathered, carved with lines that could have been from sun or age or something harder. And he was watching her, not the way Crow had watched her, with hunger barely disguised as civility. Rourke's gaze was different, measured, careful, like he was trying to assess whether she might bolt before she reached the altar. Lynn May kept walking. Her father had stopped following her halfway up the aisle. He'd collapsed into a pew beside the Johnstons, unable to watch the end of what he'd started. Fine. She'd walk herself to her own execution. When she reached the front, Rourke didn't move, didn't reach for her hand or offer his arm or do any of the things a groom was supposed to do. He just stood there, waiting. Pastor Freely cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was mercifully short. Freely read from Scripture without much conviction, his voice droning through passages about duty and obedience that made Lynn May's jaw tighten. She stared at a point somewhere past Rourke's left shoulder and tried to pretend she was somewhere else. Anywhere else. "Do you, Rourke Hale, take this woman?" "I do." His voice was rougher than she expected, deep, like gravel shifting at the bottom of a river. "And do you, Lynn May Carter?" "She does." Her father's voice, broken and desperate, called out from the pews. Pastor Freely frowned. "The bride needs to answer for herself." Every eye in the church turned toward her. Lynn May looked at Rourke for the first time since reaching the altar. Really looked at him. His expression hadn't changed. He wasn't smiling, wasn't frowning, just waiting. "I do." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you—" The church doors slammed open. Every head whipped around. Victor Crow stood in the entrance, backlit by winter sun, flanked by 3 of his men. He was dressed like he'd just come from his own wedding. Expensive suit, polished boots, hat tilted at an angle that suggested he thought he was God's gift to the territory. "I object." His voice carried across the silent church like a gunshot. Pastor Freely's face went white. "Mr. Crow, the ceremony is nearly complete." "I don't care if they're already bedded." Crow started walking up the aisle, his men trailing behind him. "That girl was promised to me." "No, she wasn't." Rourke spoke quietly, but something in his tone made Crow stop mid-stride. "You made an offer. It was declined." "Declined?" Crow laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Thomas Carter owes me $12,000. I was willing to forgive that debt in exchange for— the debt's paid." Rourke's hand moved slightly, and Lynn May realized he had a folded paper tucked into his jacket. "In full. As of 3 days ago." Crow's face darkened. "You had no right." "I had every right." Rourke pulled out the document and held it up. "Bill of sale, signed and notarized. Thomas Carter's obligations are cleared, which means you've got no claim here." The silence that followed was explosive. Lynn May could see Crow's jaw working, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. His men looked uncertain, caught between following orders and not wanting to start something in a church full of witnesses. "You don't know what you've done," Crow said finally. His voice had gone cold. "You don't know who you're crossing." "I know exactly who I'm crossing." Rourke handed the document to Pastor Freely without breaking eye contact with Crow. "Now get out of the church. The lady and I are getting married." For a moment, Lynn May thought Crow might actually draw on him. She could see it in his eyes, the calculation, the rage barely held in check. His right hand drifted toward his hip. Then Deputy Bradford stood up, hand on his own sidearm. Then the Henley brothers stood up. Then half the men in the church were standing, and Crow was smart enough to read the room. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." Rourke's tone didn't change, didn't rise, didn't waver. "Walk away, Crow." After a long, terrible pause, Crow turned on his heel and strode out. His men followed, and the doors banged shut behind them. Pastor Freely was shaking. "Perhaps we should postpone—" "Finish it." Rourke's eyes were still on the door. Freely swallowed hard. "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride." Lin May's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. The moment where he claimed her. Where he proved he was exactly what everyone said. A brute, a monster, someone who took what he wanted by force. Rourke turned to face her, and gently, carefully, he touched his forehead to hers. Just that. Nothing more. The gesture was so unexpected, so utterly unlike anything Lin May had been bracing for, that she forgot to breathe. His skin was warm. His eyes, this close, were gray. Storm cloud gray. "We're leaving," he said quietly. "Can you ride?" It took her a second to find her voice. "Yes." "Then let's go before he comes back with more men." He stepped away, turned, and started walking toward the side exit without waiting to see if she'd follow. Lin May stood frozen for a heartbeat, the weight of every stair in the church pressing down on her. Then she gathered her borrowed skirts and followed her husband into the cold. The wagon was waiting behind the church, a sturdy thing hitched to two massive draft horses that looked like they could pull a mountain if asked. Rourke's supplies were already loaded in the bed, covered with canvas and lashed down tight. He climbed up to the driver's seat and offered her his hand. Lin May hesitated. "Your choice," Rourke said. "You can come with me, or you can stay here and hope Crow doesn't circle back tonight. But decide fast." She took his hand. His grip was calloused, strong, but he didn't pull, just steadied her as she climbed up beside him. The moment she was seated, he released her hand and picked up the reins. "Hold on." They left Red Hollow at a pace just shy of reckless. Lin May gripped the seat with both hands as the wagon jolted over frozen ruts and half-buried stones. Behind them, the town disappeared into the winter landscape like it had never existed at all. Ahead, the mountains rose dark and impassable. Rourke didn't speak. Neither did she. The silence stretched for miles. Lin May studied him from the corner of her eye, trying to reconcile the stories with the man beside her. They said he'd killed his first wife in a fit of rage. They said he'd murdered 3 men over a land dispute and buried the bodies where they'd never be found. They said he was half wild, more animal than human, after years alone in the mountains. But the man driving this wagon had just stood down Victor Crow without raising his voice, had paid off her father's debts without demanding anything in return, or at least not yet, had touched her forehead to his in a church full of people expecting violence and shown something that looked almost like gentleness. Lin May didn't know what to do with that. "There's a blanket behind the seat," Rourke said suddenly. "Get it if you're cold." She was cold. She'd been cold since waking up this morning, but accepting the blanket felt like accepting something else, some kind of surrender she wasn't ready for. "I'm fine." "Suit yourself?" Another mile passed in silence. The road, if it could be called that, grew rougher. They were climbing now, leaving the valley behind. The trees closed in on both sides, pine and aspen standing like sentries. Snow clung to the branches, pristine and undisturbed. "How far?" Lin May asked. "Another 4 hours if the weather holds." 4 hours deeper into nowhere. 4 hours farther from anything that resembled civilization. "What happens when we get there?" Rourke didn't answer right away. He was watching the road, his expression unreadable. "You'll have your own room," he said finally. "Door locks from the inside. I won't touch you unless you want me to." Lin May's breath caught. "Then why'd I marry you?" He glanced at her briefly, then back to the road. "Bishamers." "Crow would have taken you by force within a week, and your father would have let him. This way, you're legally mine, which means you're legally not his. That's all this is." "That's all? That's all?" She didn't believe him, couldn't afford to believe him. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing you're not willing to give." "Everyone wants something." "Yeah." His jaw tightened. I want Crow to leave you alone. I want you to be safe. And I want to go back to my life without watching over my shoulder, wondering when he's going to send someone to slit my throat because I got in his way." He shot her a look. Satisfied? Lin Mei didn't answer. The truth was, she didn't know what she felt. Relief, maybe, or suspicion, or some toxic combination of both that sat in her chest like lead. They stopped once, around midday, to rest the horses and eat. Rourke pulled out bread and dried meat from the supplies, handed her a portion without comment, and ate standing up while scanning the tree line like he expected company. "You think he'll follow?" Lin Mei asked. "Crow? Maybe. Probably not today. He'll wait. Plan. Come at me when I'm not expecting it." "How long have you been expecting it?" Rourke smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Since the day I bought your father's debt." "Why did you?" "Because I was there when Crow made his offer. I saw your face." He tore off a piece of bread with his teeth, chewed, swallowed, figured if I didn't do something, nobody would. "You don't even know me. Don't need to." Lin Mei stared at him. "That's insane." "Probably." "You spent everything you had on a stranger because you saw her look scared in a general store?" "I didn't say it was smart." Rourke finished his portion and dusted off his hands. "But yeah, that's about the size of it. You're either a saint or a fool." "Neither." He walked back to the wagon and started checking the rigging. Just a man who's seen what happens when bastards like Crow get what they want. Wasn't about to stand by and watch it happen again. Again. The word hung there, heavy with implication. Lin Mei wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his posture told her the conversation was over. They climbed back onto the wagon and kept moving. The cabin appeared just as the sun was starting to set. It sat in a clearing carved out of the forest, backed up against a cliff face that sheltered it from the worst of the wind. Smoke rose from the chimney in a thin, steady stream. The structure itself was larger than Lin Mei expected. 2 stories, solidly built, with shuttered windows and a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. "This is it," Rourke said. He brought the wagon to a stop in front of the porch and climbed down. This time he didn't offer his hand, just started unloading supplies like she wasn't there. Lin Mei sat for a moment, staring at the cabin that was apparently her new home. It looked sturdy, isolated, lonely. She climbed down on her own and stood in the snow, unsure what to do with herself. "Inside's warmer," Rourke called over his shoulder. "Door's unlocked." She walked up the porch steps, wooden, worn smooth by weather, and pushed open the door. The interior was dark until her eyes adjusted. Then she saw it, a single large room dominated by a stone fireplace, a kitchen area to one side, a table and chairs in the center. Furs and woven blankets hung on the walls. The furniture was rough-hewn but well-made. Everything was clean, orderly. Nothing like the chaos she'd expected from a man who supposedly lived like an animal. Stairs led up to a loft. "Your room's up there," Rourke said from behind her. He'd brought in the first load of supplies and was stacking them near the kitchen. "Bed's made. There's a trunk for your things, though I figure you don't have much." "I don't have anything." He paused, then nodded. "We'll fix that." "How?" "Town run in the spring. You'll make a list." He went back outside for another load. Lin Mei climbed the stairs. The loft was smaller than the main room but still spacious. A bed sat against one wall. Real mattress, real pillows, quilts piled thick enough to survive a blizzard. The trunk he'd mentioned sat at the foot of the bed. A small window looked out over the clearing, and on the inside of the door was an iron bolt. New, recently installed. Door locks from the inside. Lin Mei tested it. Solid, secure. She sat on the bed and tried not to cry. That first night she didn't sleep. She lay under the quilts, fully dressed, listening to the sounds of the cabin settling around her. Downstairs she could hear Rourke moving around, stoking the fire, preparing something that smelled like stew. Eventually his footsteps stopped. Silence. Lin Mei stared at the ceiling and counted the wooden beams until her eyes burned. Around midnight, she heard him climb the stairs. Her body went rigid. But he didn't try the door, didn't knock. She heard him walk past her room to what must be another door at the far end of the loft, heard it open and close, and then nothing. She waited an hour to be sure. Then she slid out of bed, crept to her door, and slowly, quietly, slid the bolt into place. The click sounded like a gunshot in the silence. No reaction from the other room. Lin Mei went back to bed and finally, let herself close her eyes. Morning came too bright. Lin Mei woke to sun streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came crashing back. She sat up, still wearing yesterday's wedding dress, and tried to figure out what she was supposed to do now. Downstairs, she could hear Rourke moving around. She needed to face him eventually. Lin Mei stood, smoothed down the wrinkled dress as best she could, and went downstairs. Rourke was at the stove, cooking eggs in a cast-iron skillet. He glanced up when she appeared, but didn't comment on the dress, or the fact that she looked like she'd been dragged behind the wagon. "Coffee's on the table," he said. She poured herself a cup and sat down, cradling the warmth between her palms. "Sleep all right?" "Fine." "Liar." Lin Mei's head snapped up, but there was no accusation in his expression, just statement of fact. "First night's always hard," he continued, dividing the eggs onto 2 plates. "Gets easier." He set one plate in front of her, kept the other for himself, and sat down across the table. They ate in silence. The eggs were good. Better than good. Lin Mei hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating, and then she couldn't stop. Rourke finished first. He stood, carried his plate to the wash basin, and started cleaning it. "There's work that needs doing around here," he said without turning around. "You can help or not, your choice. But I'm not going to wait on you. You want to eat, you contribute. You want to stay warm, you help haul wood. That's how it works up here." "Fine. And if you're staying in that dress much longer, it's going to fall apart. There's clothes in the trunk upstairs. Might not fit perfect, but they'll do until we can get you something proper." Lin Mei looked down at the borrowed wedding dress, at the crooked pins and the stains from the road. "Whose were they?" Rourke's hand stilled in the wash basin. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something that might have been pain cross his features. "My sister's," he said finally. "She lived here before she got married. Moved east 5 years back. Those are what she left behind." Not his first wife, then. The relief Lin Mei felt was immediate and unreasonable. "Thank you," she said. Rourke nodded once and went back to washing dishes. Lin Mei finished her coffee, rinsed her own plate, and went upstairs to change. The clothes in the trunk were worn but serviceable. Wool skirts, linen shirts, thick socks. She found something that fit well enough and braided her hair back the way her mother had taught her. When she came back downstairs, Rourke was gone. She found him outside chopping wood with mechanical precision. His breath puffed white in the cold air. He'd stripped down to just his shirt despite the temperature, and she could see the muscles in his back and shoulders working with each swing of the axe. Lin Mei watched for a moment, then walked over. "What do you need me to do?" Rourke paused mid-swing. "You serious? You said I contribute or freeze. I'd rather contribute." Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "All right, start stacking what I've already cut. Pile it against the side of the cabin, under the overhang. Keep it off the ground." She worked until her hands were raw and her back ached. Rourke never told her to stop, never told her she'd done enough. He just kept chopping, and she kept stacking, and the pile grew. When the sun started to set, he finally drove the axe into the stump and stepped back. "That'll do for today." Lin Mei's arms felt like lead. She'd lost feeling in her fingers an hour ago. "Go inside, Frick," Rourke said. "Warm up. I'll handle dinner." She didn't argue. That night, they ate stew made from rabbit he'd trapped earlier in the week. It was rich and hot and tasted better than anything she remembered eating in town. "You're a good cook," she said. "Had to learn. Gets old eating jerky every meal." "Who taught you?" "Myself, mostly. Trial and error." He sopped up the last of his stew with bread. Lot of errors at first. Almost a smile tugged at Lin Mei's mouth. Almost. They cleaned up together this time, moving around each other in the small kitchen, like they'd done this 100 times before. When everything was put away, Rourke banked the fire and headed for the stairs. "Rourke." He stopped, turned. Lin Mei struggled for words. Why did you really marry me? He was quiet for a long time. Because I knew what Crow would do to you, he said finally. And I've seen enough women destroyed by men like him to last me 10 lifetimes. His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. You didn't deserve that. Nobody does. Even if it meant putting yourself in his crosshairs, especially then. He turned and climbed the stairs without another word. Lin Mei stood alone in the firelight, trying to figure out what kind of man throws his life away for a stranger, and not sure she wanted to know the answer. Upstairs, she bolted her door and lay in the dark, listening to the wind howl through the pines. Tomorrow would bring more wood to stack, more silence to navigate, more questions she didn't know how to ask. But tonight, for the first time in months, Lin Mei Hale now, felt something that wasn't fear. She wasn't sure what to call it yet, but it felt dangerously close to hope. The days bled into each other like watercolors in the rain. Lin Mei learned the rhythm of the cabin the way she'd once learned her mother's heartbeat, by proximity, by necessity, by having no other choice. She woke before dawn because Rourke did. She ate what he cooked because she was hungry. She worked because sitting still felt like drowning. And slowly, without meaning to, she started to notice things. The way Rourke always checked the perimeter before full dark, walking the tree line with his rifle loose in his hands. The way he rationed the coffee like it was gold but never said a word when she poured herself a second cup. The way he'd fixed the latch on the chicken coop. Yes, there were chickens, half-wild things that lived in a shed behind the cabin, without her asking, just because he'd seen her struggling with it. Small things, quiet things, things that didn't fit the stories. It had been 8 days since the wedding, 8 days of splitting wood and hauling water from the creek and learning how to bake bread in a Dutch oven that weighed more than she did. 8 days of careful distance and conversations that never went deeper than "pass the salt" or "storm coming in." 8 days, and she still locked her door every night. On the 9th morning, Lin Mei woke to find fresh snow covering everything like a burial shroud. It had fallen silent in the night, piling up in drifts that reached halfway up the porch railings. The world outside her window looked erased. She went downstairs to find Rourke already dressed, lacing up boots that looked like they'd survived a war. "Creek's gonna freeze solid if this keeps up," he said without preamble. "Need to haul extra water today. Fill every container we've got." "How much snow did we get?" "1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet in the drifts." He pulled on a heavy coat made from what looked like bear fur. "You ever use snowshoes?" "No." "You're about to learn." He was right. She was terrible at it. The snowshoes were unwieldy contraptions of bent wood and rawhide that made her feel like she was walking on oversized tennis rackets. She fell 3 times before they even made it to the creek, face planting into powder that got into her mouth and down her collar and made her want to scream. Rourke didn't laugh. He just offered his hand each time and waited while she got her feet back under her. "Lean forward more," he said on the 4th trip. "You're fighting it. Let the shoe do the work." "The shoe wants me dead." "The shoe doesn't care one way or the other. Now come on. Daylight's burning." The creek ran behind the cabin, maybe a quarter mile through the trees. It wasn't frozen yet, but ice was forming along the edges like frosted glass. The water ran dark and fast over smooth stones, so cold it made Lin Mei's teeth ache just looking at it. Rourke handed her 2 buckets. "Fill these. Don't fall in." "Helpful." "I'm serious. You go in that water, you've got maybe 2 minutes before hypothermia sets in, and I'm not diving in after you." "Good to know where I rank." He shot her a look. "I'm not diving in because we'd both die. I'd throw you a rope, but by then you'd probably be too frozen to grab it, so don't fall in." Lin Mei crouched at the edge and carefully, so carefully, dipped the first bucket into the current. The water was so cold, it burned. She filled both buckets, stood with effort, and started the trek back. They made 6 trips total. By the end, Lin Mei's shoulders were on fire and her legs felt like someone had replaced the bones with wet rope. But every barrel and pot and container in the cabin was full, and Rourke gave her a nod that might have been approval. "That'll hold us through the next storm," he said, stripping off his wet gloves. "Good work." The praise sat strange in her chest. She wasn't used to it. That night he cooked venison steaks with some kind of herb mixture that made the whole cabin smell like a forest. They ate at the table, the silence between them less hostile than it had been. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" Lin May asked. Rourke shrugged. "Picked it up. My mother used to say if a man couldn't feed himself, he had no business living alone." He cut another piece of meat, chewed thoughtfully. She was right about most things. "She's still alive?" "No, died when I was 16. Pneumonia took her in about 3 days." "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." He didn't sound particularly bothered, but something in his expression had shuddered. "What about your mother?" "Worked herself to death when I was 12. Lin May pushed food around her plate. "My father kept borrowing money for his business ventures. She kept trying to hold everything together. Eventually her heart just gave out. And he kept gambling. He kept gambling." Rourke was quiet for a moment. "He was at the wedding. Looked like hell." "Good." The word came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take it back. Her father had made his choices. She'd paid the price. "You hate him," Rourke said. "Not a question." "I don't know what I feel." Lin May set down her fork. "Some days I think I hate him. Other days I just feel sorry for him. He's weak. He's always been weak. And weak men destroy everything around them trying to prove they're not." "That's true enough. Is that what happened to your first wife?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Rourke's jaw tightened. He stood abruptly, carried his plate to the wash basin with movements that were just a hair too controlled. "I was never married before," he said flatly. "Don't know where you heard that, but it's a lie." Lin May blinked. "Everyone in town says everyone in town's an idiot." He scrubbed the plate harder than necessary. "They see a man living alone in the mountains and invent stories to make themselves feel better about their own boring lives. I've heard what they say. Most of it's horse shit." "Most of it? I'm not a saint." He turned to face her, and his eyes were hard. "I've killed men, 3 of them. But it was self-defense, and the sheriff knows it, even if he's too much of a coward to say so publicly. And I never had a wife before you, never wanted one. Still, don't particularly want one if I'm being honest." The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like relief. "Then why go through with it?" Lin May asked. "I told you why." "No, you told me part of it, but there's something else, something you're not saying." Rourke stared at her for a long moment. Then he dried his hands on a rag and sat back down at the table, but he didn't look at her. He looked at the fire crackling in the hearth like it held answers. "7 years ago," he said slowly, "I was in a town about 50 miles south of here, a place called Bitter Creek. I was buying supplies, minding my own business, and I saw a girl, maybe 15, being dragged out of the general store by a man twice her size. She was screaming, fighting. Nobody did a damn thing." Lin May's breath caught. Turns out her father had sold her to this man to clear a debt. She didn't want to go. Man didn't care, and everyone in that town just watched it happen, told themselves it wasn't their problem, that it was legal, so it must be right. His hands clenched on the table. "I should have done something. I knew I should have, but I was young and stupid, and I told myself it wasn't my fight." "What happened to her?" "Found out later she died 6 months after that. Man beat her to death in a drunken rage. Sheriff ruled it an accident." Rourke's voice had gone cold. "So when I saw Crow circling you, saw your father getting desperate, I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. That's all this is, me trying to live with myself." The confession settled between them like ashes. Lin May didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there was anything to say. "I'm not a good man," Rourke continued. "Don't mistake what I did for nobility. I'm just a man who's tired of watching bastards win. You could have just paid off the debt. Let me go." Crow would have found another angle. He always does. This way, you're protected. Legally, financially, all of it. He finally met her eyes. "And when spring comes, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. I'll give you money, supplies, whatever you need. But until then, you're safe here. That's the deal. What if I don't want to leave?" The question surprised them both. Rourke studied her face like he was trying to read a language he didn't quite understand. "Then you stay, as long as you want. But it's your choice. It'll always be your choice." Something in Lin May's chest loosened, some knot she hadn't realized was there. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." They finished cleaning up in silence, but it was different now. Less fragile. Less like they were both waiting for something to break. That night, Lin Mei climbed the stairs to her room and stood for a long moment with her hand on the bolt. Then she walked away without sliding it home. The next week brought more snow and a cold so intense it felt like breathing glass. They fell into a routine that was almost comfortable. Rourke taught her how to shoot, setting up targets against the cliff face and showing her how to hold the rifle, how to breathe, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling it. She was a terrible shot at first, missed the target completely on her first 6 tries. "You're anticipating the recoil," Rourke said. "Stop flinching." "I'm not flinching." "You're absolutely flinching. Try again." She tried again, hit the edge of the target. Better. By the end of the afternoon, she could hit center mass 3 times out of 5, and her shoulder was one giant bruise from the rifle's kick. "You'll get stronger," Rourke said as they walked back to the cabin. "Practice every day. You'll be hitting bullseyes by spring." "Why does it matter if I can shoot?" He glanced at her. "Because if someone comes for you when I'm not here, I want you to be able to defend yourself. Can't always count on me being around." The thought of being here alone sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. But he was right. She needed to be able to take care of herself. That evening, as Lin Mei helped prepare dinner, she'd graduated from watching to actually being useful. There was a sound outside that made Rourke go completely still. Horses. Multiple horses. He was at the window in 3 strides, rifle in hand, before Lin Mei had time to process what was happening. "Get upstairs," he said quietly. "Lock your door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." "What's now, Lin Mei?" She ran. Upstairs, she slammed the bolt home and pressed her ear to the door, trying to hear over the hammering of her own heart. Voices carried up from below, male, unfamiliar. "Rourke Hale? We're looking for Rourke Hale." "You found him. State your business." "Name's Carson. This here's Briggs and Malloy. We work for Mr. Crow." Lin Mei's blood turned to ice. "Crow doesn't have business with me," Rourke said. His voice was level, but she could hear the tension underneath. "See, that's where you're wrong. Mr. Crow says you stole something that belongs to him." "I didn't steal anything. I bought a debt, legal and notarized." "Funny thing about that debt." The man called Carson sounded amused. "Turns out there was another agreement, made before yours. Mr. Crow has documentation proving Miss Carter was promised to him first. That's a lie. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, Mr. Crow's prepared to be reasonable. He'll buy out your claim, pay you double what you spent, plus a little extra for your trouble. All you gotta do is hand over the girl." "No. That's not a smart answer. It's the only answer you're getting." There was a pause. Lin Mei could picture the men outside, weighing their options. 3 against 1. They probably thought the odds were in their favor. "Mr. Crow figured you might be difficult," Carson said. "So he asked us to deliver a message. You got 1 week to reconsider. After that, things get unpleasant." "They're already unpleasant. You're on my property uninvited. Leave before I make you leave." "Big talk for a man outnumbered. You think you're the first men who've tried to threaten me on my own land?" Rourke's laugh was cold. "I'm still here." "They're not. Work it out." Another pause, longer this time. 1 week, Carson said finally. "Think it over." The sound of horses retreating. Lin Mei waited, barely breathing, until she heard the door close below. "Lin Mei, it's safe." She unbolted the door with shaking hands and went downstairs. Rourke was at the window, watching the tree line. His knuckles were white on the rifle stock. "What do we do?" she asked. "We don't do anything. I handle this. This is happening because of me. This is happening because Crow's a bastard who doesn't like being told no." He turned to face her. "But he's not getting you. I don't care what forged documents he's cooked up or how many men he sends. You stay here, you stay safe. He'll kill you. He can try. Rourke, I mean it." He set the rifle down, but his expression didn't soften. "I've dealt with men like Crow before. He's counting on me being scared, on you being scared. But fear's only useful if you let it control you. and I stopped being scared of men like him a long time ago. Lin May wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was insane, that no stranger was worth dying for, that they should just run. But she could see in his eyes that running wasn't an option. Not for him. "What happened to the men who came for you before?" she asked quietly. "Like I said, I'm still here." That night, neither of them slept much. Lin May lay in bed listening to Rourke pace downstairs, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Around midnight, she got up and went to the window. The moon was full, turning the snow blue-white and casting shadows sharp as knives. Nothing moved in the trees, but she could feel it, the weight of being watched, the certainty that somewhere out there men were planning violence. She thought about what Rourke had said, about the girl in Bitter Creek, about mistakes and second chances and trying to live with yourself. And she realized something that should have terrified her but didn't. She didn't want to leave. Not in the spring. Not ever. This cabin, this mountain, this strange, silent man who'd bought her father's debts and asked for nothing in return. Somehow, in less than 2 weeks, it had become more of a home than anywhere she'd ever lived. The thought should have felt like a trap. Instead, it felt like freedom. Morning came gray and bitter. Rourke was already up, checking his ammunition and cleaning his rifle with methodical precision. "I'm going into town," he said without looking up. "Need to talk to the sheriff, see if I can get ahead of whatever Crow's planning. I'm coming with you." "No." "Yes." Lin May came down the stairs. "If this is about me, I should be there. If this is about you, that's exactly why you should stay here. Crow sees you in town. He might do something stupid. He's going to do something stupid anyway. At least let me face him on my own terms." Rourke looked up, studied her face. "You sure?" "No, but I'm going anyway." Something that might have been respect flickered across his expression. "Get dressed warm. It's a 3-hour ride and the temperature's dropping." They left an hour later, both armed, both silent. The journey back to Red Hollow felt longer than the journey out had been. The landscape looked different under fresh snow, less familiar, more hostile. They passed another rider about halfway there, a trapper Rourke knew, who tipped his hat and kept moving without stopping to chat. "Does Crow own everything out here?" Lin May asked. "Most of it. Not my land, though. My claim's been in my family for 30 years. He's tried to buy it before. I always said no." "Why?" "Because it's mine." Rourke's jaw set. "And I don't bow to men who think money makes them gods." They reached Red Hollow just after noon. The town looked exactly the same as when Lin May had left it, small, worn, tired. But now she saw it differently, saw the way people hurried past Crow's bank with their heads down, saw the expensive horses tied up outside the saloon that Crow owned, saw the architecture of control that had been invisible to her before. Rourke led them straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Denton was a heavy-set man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He visibly paled when Rourke walked through the door. "Rourke, wasn't expecting you. Need to file a formal complaint. 3 of Crow's men showed up at my cabin last night making threats." Denton's expression shuddered. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that suggests Crow thinks he can intimidate me into giving up my wife." "Now hold on." He sent Carson, Briggs, and Malloy. They claimed Crow has prior documentation on Thomas Carter's debt. Said I have a week to hand over Lin May or things get unpleasant. Rourke leaned on the desk. "That's extortion, probably menacing, and it happened on my property, so you're going to document it." Denton looked between them, clearly calculating. "Look, Rourke, I hear what you're saying, but Crow's a powerful man. If he says he has documentation, then let him produce it in court, legal proceedings, everything above board." Rourke's voice went cold. "Unless you're saying the law doesn't apply to him." "I'm not saying that." "Then what are you saying?" The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "I'm saying maybe there's a way to resolve this that doesn't involve anyone getting hurt. Crow's willing to pay you for your trouble. That's more than fair. I'm not selling my wife like she's livestock." "She was sold to you." Rourke's fist hit the desk hard enough to make the lamp jump. "Document the complaint. Now. Or I go to the territorial governor myself and explain how the sheriff of Red Hollow is enabling a land baron to threaten law-abiding citizens." Denton swallowed hard. "Fine, I'll document it. But I'm telling you, Rourke, You're making an enemy you can't afford. I'll take my chances. They left the sheriff's office with nothing accomplished except putting things on record. Lin May could feel eyes following them as they walked back to their horses. That was pointless, she said. No, it establishes a pattern. If Crow moves against me now, there's documentation that he threatened me first. Makes it harder for him to claim I started it. You think he cares about legal technicalities? No, but the governor might. They were mounting up when a voice called out behind them. Lin May? She turned to find her father standing on the boardwalk, looking smaller than she remembered, older, more broken. Father, Thomas Carter approached slowly, like he was afraid she might run. I heard you were in town. I needed to see you, to apologize. Save it. Please, just give me a minute. Rourke's hand moved to his rifle, but Lin May shook her head slightly. This was her conversation to have. 1 minute, she said. Her father stepped closer, and she could smell whiskey on his breath even from 3 feet away. I know I failed you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand, I thought I was saving you. Crow would have taken you anyway. At least this way you had a chance at what? A different kind of prison? At survival. Thomas's eyes were wet. Rourke paid off everything. You're free of my debts. That's more than I could have given you. You could have given me a choice. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. I signed this morning. It's a legal declaration releasing any claim I have over you as my daughter. You're emancipated. Completely. You don't even have to stay married if you don't want to. You're free. Lin May stared at the document. It looked official, notarized. Why would you do this? Because it's the only decent thing I have left to give you. He pressed the paper into her hand. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but maybe someday you'll be able to think of me as something other than the man who destroyed your life. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost. Lin May stood there holding the paper, not sure what to feel. You okay? Rourke asked quietly. I don't know. We should go, storm's coming in. He was right, the sky had turned the color of old bruises, and the wind was picking up. They rode out of Red Hollow in silence. The storm hit about an hour from the cabin. Snow came down in sheets, whipped sideways by wind that cut like razors. Visibility dropped to nothing. They had to dismount and lead the horses on foot, following the trail more by instinct than sight. By the time they reached the cabin, both of them were half frozen and completely exhausted. Rourke got the horses into the small stable while Lin May stumbled inside and started building up the fire. Her hands were so numb she could barely hold the kindling. When Rourke came in, he was covered in snow from head to toe. He shook it off like a dog and started stripping out of his wet outer layers. We're stuck here for at least a day, he said. Maybe 2 if this keeps up. Lin May nodded, not trusting her voice. They worked together to get warm, changing into dry clothes, heating water for tea, stoking the fire until the cabin started to feel less like an icebox. Finally, sitting at the table with hot cups cradled in their hands, Rourke spoke. What your father did, giving you that paper, that was unexpected. Yeah. You know what it means, right? You could get the marriage annulled, walk away from all of this. Lin May looked at him. Really looked at him. At this man who'd thrown away everything to save a stranger, who'd asked for nothing, who'd given her safety and space and something that was starting to feel dangerously like trust. I know, she said. And I'm not going anywhere. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Rourke set down his cup. You should think about it. Really think about it. This isn't going to get easier. Crow's not going to stop, and I can't guarantee I can protect you forever. I don't need you to protect me forever. I just need you to stand with me. Lin May reached across the table and after a moment's hesitation, took his hand. We face this together, whatever comes. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, solid, real. Together, he said. Outside, the wind howled and the snow fell and the world disappeared into white. But inside the cabin, something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed. They weren't strangers anymore. They weren't even really husband and wife. They were something else. Something neither of them had a name for yet. But whatever it was, it felt like the beginning of something worth fighting for. And when the storm finally passed, they'd be ready. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of being trapped inside while the wind screamed and the snow piled higher than the windows. 3 days of rationing firewood and melting snow for water and learning how to exist in close quarters without stepping on each other's last nerve. On the fourth morning, Lin Mei woke to silence. She went to the window and found the world transformed. Everything was white and still, and so bright it hurt to look at. The clearing was buried under drifts that reached halfway up the cabin walls. The trees sagged under the weight of snow. Even the smoke from their chimney seemed frozen in place. "We're digging out today," Rourke said from behind her. She turned to find him already dressed, holding 2 shovels. They worked for hours. Lin Mei's back screamed and her hands blistered inside her gloves, but she kept going. They cleared a path to the stable first, then to the woodshed, then a wider area around the cabin perimeter. Rourke moved like a machine, steady and relentless, and she matched his pace out of sheer stubbornness. By the time they finished, the sun was starting to set and Lin Mei could barely lift her arms. "Good work," Rourke said, leaning on his shovel. He wasn't even breathing hard. "How are you not dying right now?" "Practice. You spend enough winters up here, you get used to it." He nodded toward the tree line. "I need to check the traps. Might have caught something before the storm hit. I'll come with you." "You sure? You look ready to fall over." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine, but she also wasn't going to sit in the cabin alone, not with Crow's deadline hanging over them like an axe. They strapped on snowshoes and headed into the woods. The traps were spread out over about 2 miles of forest, hidden in places that made sense to Rourke and looked like random wilderness to Lin Mei. The first 3 were empty. The fourth had caught a fox that had frozen solid. The fifth held a rabbit, also frozen. "Not much," Rourke said, collecting the rabbit, "but it'll make a decent stew." They were heading back when Lin Mei saw them, tracks in the snow, boot prints, too fresh to be from before the storm, leading away from the cabin. Rourke saw them at the same instant. His whole body went rigid. "Get behind me." "What? Now?" She moved without thinking, pressing herself against his back while he unslung the rifle from his shoulder. They stood there, frozen, listening. Nothing. Just wind in the trees and the occasional plop of snow falling from branches. "Someone was watching the cabin," Rourke said quietly. "During the storm or right after. These tracks are maybe 3-4 hours old." "Crow's men?" "Probably. Could be scouts, could be worse." He started following the tracks, moving carefully, rifle ready. "Stay close. Step where I step." They tracked the boot prints for maybe half a mile before they reached a spot where multiple sets of tracks converged. 5 or 6 people from the look of it. They'd stood here for a while. The snow was trampled down like they'd been having a conversation. Then the tracks split up and headed in different directions. "They were planning something," Lin Mei said. "Yeah." Rourke studied the ground, his expression grim. "And they wanted us to know they'd been here. Otherwise, they would have covered their tracks." "That's the week, isn't it? The deadline." He didn't answer right away. Just stood there, reading the snow like it was a book written in a language only he understood. "We need to get back," he said finally. "Now." They made it to the cabin in half the time it had taken to reach the traps. Rourke immediately started securing everything, checking the shutters, barring the door, loading every weapon he owned. "What are you doing?" Lin Mei asked, though she already knew. "Getting ready." He set 2 loaded rifles by the front window, a shotgun by the back door, and his revolver on the table. "They're coming tonight, maybe tomorrow night, but soon." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I'd do. Wait until we're relaxed, hit us when we're sleeping." He looked at her. "You remember what I taught you about shooting?" "Yes." "Good, because you might need it." The certainty in his voice made her chest tight. "We could run, take the horses, and we wouldn't make it 10 miles in this snow, and they'd chase us down like dogs." He checked the load in the shotgun. "No, we make our stand here. Together. Like you said." Lin Mei swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking. "I'm scared." "Good. Scared keeps you sharp. Just don't let it freeze you." He crossed to her, put his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me. Whatever happens tonight, you stay in this cabin. You don't go outside. You don't open the door for anyone but me. Someone tries to come through a window, you shoot them. You hear me? I hear you. And if something happens to me, don't. If something happens to me, he continued, his voice hard, you take the sorrel horse, the one with the white blaze. She's the fastest. There's a map in the top drawer of my desk upstairs, marked with safe houses between here and the territorial capital. You ride hard. You don't stop. And you get to the governor. Tell him everything. He owes me a favor. He'll protect you. Rourke, promise me. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him nothing was going to happen, that they'd be fine, that this was all just paranoia. But she couldn't lie to him. Not now. I promise. Good. He released her shoulders and stepped back. Now help me move the table in front of the door. And then we wait. Night fell like a curtain. They ate cold jerky because lighting the stove would have been too visible. They didn't talk much. Just sat in the dark, listening, waiting. Around midnight, Lin Mei started to doze off in the chair by the fire. Get some sleep, Rourke said quietly. I'll keep watch. What about you? I'll sleep later. Go on. She climbed the stairs to her room but didn't change out of her clothes. Just lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, boots still on. The rifle Rourke had given her lay on the bed beside her, cold and heavy. She must have fallen asleep despite everything, because when she jerked awake, the quality of the darkness had changed. It was deeper, thicker, the kind of dark that came right before dawn, and there were voices outside. Lin Mei grabbed the rifle and crept to the window. Down below, she could see shapes moving in the pre-dawn gloom, 4, maybe 5 men spreading out around the cabin. They were trying to be quiet, but the snow made silence impossible. She looked toward Rourke's room. His door was open, the room empty. Heart hammering, she moved to the stairs and looked down into the main room. Rourke was at the front window, rifle resting on the sill, watching. He must have heard her because he spoke without turning around. They're here. Carson brought friends. How many? 6, that I can see. Might be more in the trees. As if on cue, a voice called out from the darkness. Rourke, hail! We're here on behalf of Mr. Victor Crow. Lin Mei recognized Carson's voice. Time's up, Carson continued. Mister, Crow's been more than patient. Now he wants what's owed to him. Rourke didn't respond, just kept watching through the rifle scope. We can do this easy or hard, Hale. Send out the girl and we'll leave you be. Otherwise things are going to get ugly. Still nothing from Rourke. Lin Mei came down the stairs, her own rifle gripped tight. What do we do? We wait, Rourke said quietly. Let them make the first move. Soon as they try to come through that door, we're within our rights to defend our property. They've got us surrounded. They think they do, but they're standing in the open and we're behind cover. Their mistake. Another shout from outside. Last chance, Hale. Don't make us burn you out. That got a reaction. Rourke's jaw tightened. They won't burn it, Lin Mei said. They need me alive. They need you alive. They don't need me. He shifted position slightly. Get ready. This is about to go sideways. All right, boys. Carson's voice had turned ugly. Looks like we're doing this the hard way. Briggs, get the... Rourke fired. The shot shattered the pre-dawn quiet like breaking glass. Outside, someone screamed, Cabin! Get to the cabin! Carson was yelling now, all pretense of civility gone. More gunfire erupted. Bullets punched through the shutters, splintering wood. Lin Mei dropped to the floor, her heart trying to climb out through her throat. Rourke fired twice more, methodical and calm. Window! Your left! Lin Mei scrambled to the indicated window just in time to see a man trying to climb through. She raised her rifle with shaking hands and squeezed the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her over, and the shot went wide, but it was enough to make the man drop back down with a curse. Good, Rourke shouted over the noise. Keep them back! The firefight lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. The cabin filled with gun smoke and the smell of burnt powder. Wood splinters rained down from the walls. Someone was screaming outside, high and terrible, and Lin Mei realized it was the man Rourke had shot first. Then, as suddenly as it started, the shooting stopped. Lin Mei's ears rang in the silence. She stayed pressed against the wall, rifle clutched to her chest, trying to breathe. "Carson?" Rourke's voice was rough. "You still out there?" A pause. Then, "I'm here." "How many men you want to lose today?" "As many as it takes." "Then you better hope Mr. Crow's paying your widows, because I've got ammunition for a week and you're standing in an open field." Rourke ejected a spent shell and chambered a fresh round. "Walk away. This is your only warning." "Can't do that." "Then come ahead, but I guarantee you won't all make it to the door." Another long silence. Then the sound of boots crunching in snow, retreating. "This isn't over, Hale. It never is." The footsteps faded. Lin May waited, muscles locked, until Rourke finally lowered his rifle. "They're pulling back," he said. "Regrouping. They'll try again, but not today." Lin May's legs gave out. She slid down the wall and sat on the floor, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Rourke crossed to her, knelt down. "You hit?" "No, I don't think so." He checked her anyway, quick and efficient, looking for blood. "You did good. Really good." "I missed." "You scared him off. That's what mattered." He helped her to her feet. "Come on. We need to check the damage." The cabin looked like a war zone. Bullet holes pocked the walls. 2 windows were shattered. The front door had taken a dozen hits, and the wood was splintered around the lock. But they were alive. Outside in the snow about 20 yards from the cabin, a man lay face down and unmoving. Lin May could see the dark stain spreading around him. "Is he dead?" "Yeah." "Hit him center mass." Rourke's voice was flat. "The others took him with them. This one they left." "Who was he, Che?" "Don't know. Don't care." He turned away from the window. "We need to fortify. They'll be back, and next time they'll bring more men." They spent the rest of the day boarding up the broken windows and reinforcing the door. Rourke worked in grim silence, and Lin May matched him. Her hands had stopped shaking, but everything else felt numb, distant, like she was watching herself from far away. She'd almost shot a man. Would have shot him if her aim had been better. The thought sat in her stomach like a stone. That night they took shifts watching. Lin May couldn't sleep anyway, so she sat at the window with the rifle across her lap and stared into the darkness. Around 3 a.m, Rourke came and sat beside her. "You okay?" "No." "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." She paused. "Does it get easier, the violence?" He was quiet for a long time. "No. It just gets more familiar." "That's not comforting." "It's the truth." Lin May looked at him. In the dim firelight, his face was all angles and shadows. "The 3 men you killed, the ones you said were self-defense, was it like today?" "Worse. They came at night, tried to burn me out. I got 2 of them before they even knew I was awake. The 3rd one made it inside." His hand moved unconsciously to his side, and Lin May realized there was a scar there under his shirt. "He got a knife into me before I put him down. Nearly bled out before I could get to town for a doctor." "Why did they come for you?" Crow again. This was 5 years back, before he owned half the territory. "He wanted my land for a railroad spur, sent those men to convince me to sell." Rourke's expression was unreadable. Obviously, it didn't work. "He's been after you for 5 years?" "On and off. He tries something, I push back, he retreats for a while, then he finds a new angle." Rourke looked at her. "You're just the latest excuse." The words should have made her angry. Instead, they just made her tired. "I should go," she said. "Take that horse, ride to the capital like you said. End this." "Is that what you want?" "I want you to stop almost dying because of me." "That's not an answer." Lin May set down the rifle. "I don't know what I want anymore. A month ago, I was selling fabric in a general store and trying not to think about the future. Now I'm shooting at men through windows and watching people die. Nothing makes sense." "No," Rourke agreed. "It doesn't. But here's what I know. You're tougher than you think you are. Braver too. And whatever happens next, you'll handle it. Because you don't have a choice." That's bleak. That's survival. The next morning brought riders, but not from Crow. Lin May saw them first, 3 horses coming up the trail, moving slow and deliberate. She grabbed her rifle and called for Rourke. He was at the window in seconds, scanning the approaching group. Then his shoulders relaxed slightly. "It's all right. That's Sheriff Denton." "The sheriff?" Lin May's grip tightened on the rifle. Why would he? Only one way to find out? Rourke opened the door but stayed inside, rifle visible. The message was clear. Welcome, but on guard. Denton dismounted about 10 feet from the porch, hands deliberately away from his sidearm. The two men with him, deputies from their badges, stayed on their horses. Rourke, Miss Carter. Denton's eyes swept over the damaged cabin. Heard there was trouble out here. Who told you? Got a report from one of Crow's men. Said you opened fire on them unprovoked. That's a lie. Is it? Denton nodded toward the boarded windows. Because it looks like there was a battle here. There was. They came at dawn, 6 armed men demanding I hand over my wife. I refused. They shot first. Rourke's voice was hard. And I've got a dead man in the trees to prove they weren't here for a friendly visit. Dead man? About 20 yards north of the cabin. I can show you the body if you want. Or are you just here to arrest me and make Crow's job easier? Denton's jaw worked. I'm here to keep the peace. Little late for that. The sheriff's eyes cut to Lin May. Miss Carter, are you here of your own free will? Lin May stepped forward, into the doorway beside Rourke. Yes. You're not being held against your will, coerced in any way. No, I'm exactly where I want to be. Mr. Crow claims. I don't care what Victor Crow claims. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. He never owned me. My father's debt was paid. I married Rourke Hale legally, and those men came here to kidnap me at gunpoint. So, if you're looking for criminals, Sheriff, you're facing the wrong direction. Denton looked between them, clearly calculating. One of the deputies shifted in his saddle. I'll need to see the body, the sheriff said finally. Rourke led them to it. The man was still there, frozen now, his blood crystallized in the snow around him. Denton examined the wound, the position, the way the snow was trampled all around the cabin. When he straightened, his face was troubled. This is self-defense, clear as day. He looked at Rourke. But it's also a declaration of war. You know that, right? Crow's not going to let this stand. Then he shouldn't have sent men to my property. I'm trying to help you here. If you just... What? Give in? Hand over my wife to a man who thinks he can buy anything he wants? Rourke's voice dropped to something dangerous. Not happening. So either you do your job and arrest the men who attacked us, or you get off my land and let me handle this my way. Denton was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, and suddenly looked about 100 years old. I can't arrest Crow's men, not without starting something I can't finish. He owns the mayor, half the town council, and probably the territorial judge. He held up a hand when Rourke started to protest. But I can file this report, document the attack, make it official that you acted in self-defense. It won't stop him, but it might slow him down. That's it? That's all the law can do? For now, yeah. That's all I can do. Denton turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Crow's bringing in a man from Denver. Name's Keller, former Pinkerton. Doesn't ask questions, doesn't leave witnesses. He met Rourke's eyes. If I were you, I'd consider that trip to the capital. Talk to the governor before Keller gets here. When's he arriving? End of the week, maybe. Depends on the roads. Rourke absorbed this in silence. Thanks for the warning. Didn't hear it from me. Denton mounted his horse. Be smart, Rourke. This isn't a fight you can win with rifles. They watched the lawmen ride away until they disappeared into the trees. He's right, Lin May said quietly. We should go to the capital. Maybe. You're thinking about staying. I'm thinking about not running from a bully. Rourke turned to her. But it's your choice. I meant what I said. You want to leave? We leave. You want to stay and fight? We stay and fight. But you decide. Lin May looked at the cabin, at the bullet holes and broken windows, at the blood in the snow, at this man who'd stood between her and violence without hesitation. She thought about running, about starting over somewhere safe, somewhere Crow's influence didn't reach, but she also thought about what running would mean. It would mean Crow won. It would mean every other man like him learned that enough money and enough violence could buy anything. It would mean she was still the girl being sold, just in a different way. We stay, she said. Rourke studied her face. You sure? No, but I'm done running from men who think they own me. Something that might have been pride flickered across his expression. All right then, we dig in, make this place a fortress, and when Keller comes, we're ready. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Rourke showed Lin May how to reload faster, how to shoot from cover, how to move through the cabin without exposing herself to the windows. He set up tripwires around the perimeter, buried in the snow where no one would see them until it was too late. He stockpiled ammunition and medical supplies and enough food to last a month if necessary. And on the fourth morning, just after dawn, a single rider appeared on the trail. Not 6 men this time, just one, Victor Crow himself. He rode right up to the cabin like he owned it, tied his horse to the porch rail, and knocked on the door. Rourke opened it with his rifle in hand. Crow smiled. "Morning, Hale. Mind if I come in? We need to talk." Rourke didn't move from the doorway. "Say what you need to say from there." Victor Crow's smile didn't falter, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. He was dressed like he was attending a business meeting in Denver. Tailored coat, polished boots, hat that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Standing there on the porch of a bullet-riddled cabin in the middle of nowhere, he looked absurd. Dangerous, but absurd. "Not very hospitable, Hale. You lost the right to hospitality when you sent 6 men to shoot up my home. A misunderstanding." Crow spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. "My men were overzealous. I've already disciplined them for their poor judgment. One of them's dead." "Yes, unfortunate." Crow's tone suggested it was about as unfortunate as a broken stirrup. "But that's actually why I'm here, to prevent further bloodshed. I'm a reasonable man, Hale. I don't want this conflict any more than you do." "Then leave. If only it were that simple." Crow's eyes shifted past Rourke, searching the dim interior of the cabin. "Is Miss Carter here? I'd like to speak with her." Lin May stepped into view, rifle in her hands. "I can hear you fine from here." Crow's expression softened into something that might have looked paternal if you didn't know better. "Lin May, you look well. I'm glad to see you haven't been harmed." "No thanks to your men. Again, I apologize for their excess." He took a step closer to the door. Rourke's rifle came up slightly. Crow stopped, hands still visible. "I came here to make you an offer, a generous one. I'm prepared to pay Mr. Hale here $10,000 for the termination of your marriage contract. That's more than enough to set him up comfortably for life. And you would come under my protection, as was originally intended." "I don't need your protection." Don't you?" Crow's voice took on an edge. "Look around, Lin May. You're living in a war zone. How long do you think this can last? How many more men will die before you accept reality?" "The reality is, I'm not for sale. Everything's for sale, it's just a matter of price." Crow pulled out a folded document from his coat. "I have here a contract signed by your father promising you to me in exchange for forgiveness of his debts. Dated 2 weeks before your marriage to Hale. Which means, legally speaking, Hale's claim is invalid." Rourke's jaw tightened. "That's a forgery." "The notary stamp says otherwise, as does the county clerk's signature." Crow's smile was all teeth now. "I tried to avoid this, tried to handle it quietly, but you forced my hand. So here we are. Legal proceedings, Hale. I'll see you in territorial court, and when the judge rules in my favor, which he will, you'll have spent all this effort for nothing." Lin May felt the floor drop out from under her. He's lying. He has to be lying. But Rourke's expression had gone carefully blank, which meant he thought Crow might be telling the truth. "Even if that document's real," Rourke said slowly, "it doesn't matter. Lin May's father signed a declaration of emancipation. She's a free woman, not property to be traded in contracts. That declaration was signed after my contract, which makes it void, since she was already promised to me." Crow refolded the document and tucked it away. "But I'm not here to argue legal technicalities on your porch. I'm here to offer you a way out. Take the money. Walk away. Find yourself a nice piece of land somewhere else and live out your days in peace. And if I refuse, then I'll see you in court. And when I win, not if, when, I'll make sure everyone knows Rourke Hale is a man who kidnaps other men's wives and kills their employees." Crow's voice dropped. You think you've got a bad reputation now? Wait until I'm done with you. You'll be lucky if the law doesn't hang you for murder." The silence that followed was suffocating. Lin May watched Rourke's face, trying to read what he was thinking. His hand hadn't moved from the rifle. His expression hadn't changed, but she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. "I need to see that document, Meb," Rourke said finally. "The original, not a copy." "Of course. It'll be presented in court as evidence." "No, I need to see it now, before I even consider your offer." Crow hesitated. "I don't have it with me." "Then we've got nothing to discuss. Hale, get off my property, and don't come back unless you're ready to show me proof of this supposed contract. Until then, you're trespassing." Crow's mask of civility slipped for just a moment. Lin May saw the rage underneath, cold and controlled and infinitely more dangerous than the shouting kind. "You're making a mistake," Crow said quietly. "Probably, but it's my mistake to make. 3 days. I'll give you 3 days to reconsider. After that, Keller arrives and we stop playing games." Crow untied his horse and mounted up. "And Lin May? When this is over and you're under my roof where you belong, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that I tried to do this peacefully. Remember that every drop of blood spilled is on your conscience, not mine." He wheeled his horse around and rode off without waiting for a response. Lin May and Rourke stood in the doorway, watching until he disappeared into the trees. "He's going to kill you," Lin May said. Her voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. "Maybe." Rourke closed the door and bolted it. "But first we're going to find out if that contract's real." "How?" "By going to the county clerk's office and checking the records ourselves." "Oh, spoiter, son." He was already moving, pulling on his heavy coat, loading extra ammunition into his pockets. "If it's registered like he claims, there will be a copy on file. If there's not, we'll know he's bluffing." "That's a 2-day ride in good weather. Then we better leave now." "Rourke, wait." Lin May grabbed his arm. "This is insane. Even if we prove it's a forgery, he controls the judge. He controls the whole legal system out here. We can't win this in a courtroom." "No, but we can expose him. Make enough noise that the territorial governor has to get involved." Rourke's eyes were hard. "Crow's got power, but he's not invincible. He's gotten away with this for years because nobody's pushed back hard enough." "Well, I'm pushing back." "You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably." He said it so matter-of-factly that Lin May wanted to scream. "But I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I let another girl get destroyed by a man like him." There it was again, the ghost of Bitter Creek, the girl he couldn't save haunting every decision he made. "I'm not her," Lin May said quietly. "I'm not that girl you watched get dragged away. You don't owe her this. You don't owe me this." "I know." Rourke cupped her face in his hands, rough and gentle at the same time. "But I'm doing it anyway, because it's the right thing to do. And because somewhere along the way you stopped being a stranger I was trying to save and started being someone He stopped, swallowed whatever he'd been about to say. "You matter, that's all." The words hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Lin May wanted to tell him he mattered too, that somewhere in the past month, this angry, damaged mountain man had become the first person in her life who'd ever made her feel safe, that the thought of losing him made her chest hurt in ways she didn't have words for. But before she could find those words, a sound outside made them both freeze. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, moving fast. Rourke was at the window in 2 strides. "Damn it!" "What?" Crow didn't come alone. He had men waiting in the trees, and they're coming in hot. Lin May grabbed her rifle. "How many?" "Too many." The first shot came through the window before Rourke could move. Glass exploded inward. He dove sideways, hit the floor hard. Lin May screamed his name, but he was already rolling to cover, rifle coming up. "Upstairs!" he shouted. "Get upstairs now! I'm not leaving you. You want to help? Cover the back approach. Go!" Lin May ran for the stairs as the front of the cabin erupted in gunfire. Wood splintered. The door shook on its hinges. Men were shouting outside, coordinating their attack. She made it to the loft and threw herself against the wall beside the window. Below, she could hear Rourke returning fire, the boom of his rifle punctuating the chaos. Through her window, Lin May could see 3 men advancing on the back of the cabin. One of them was carrying something that looked like a bundle of rags. Then she smelled it. Kerosene. "They're going to burn us out!" she shouted down. No response from Rourke. Just more gunfire. The man with the kerosene-soaked rags was getting closer. Lin May raised her rifle, tried to steady her shaking hands, and fired. The shot went wide. The man looked up, saw her in the window, and smiled. He lit the rags. Lin May fired again. This time she hit him, shoulder, not center mass, but enough to make him stagger. The burning bundle fell from his hands into the snow, where it hissed and smoked. But the other 2 men were still coming. She fired twice more, keeping them pinned, buying time she didn't know how to use. Below, something heavy hit the front door. Once, twice, the wood was giving way. "Rourke! I'm here!" He appeared at the base of the stairs, face streaked with powder burns. "We need to go, out the back window, into the trees." "What about—" The front door exploded inward. 2 men burst through, guns raised. Rourke shot the first one before he cleared the threshold. The second one got a shot off that punched through the wall inches from Lin May's head. She returned fire on instinct. The man went down. "Now!" Rourke was climbing the stairs, moving fast despite a limp she hadn't noticed before. "We're out of time!" They ran for the back bedroom. Rourke smashed out the window with his rifle butt and looked down. It was maybe a 12-foot drop into snow, survivable, but barely. "You first," he said. "Together." Lin May. Together or not at all. He didn't argue, just grabbed her hand and jumped. They hit the snow hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. Lin May rolled, gasping, trying to get her feet under her. Rourke hauled her up, and they ran for the tree line. Behind them, men were pouring out of the cabin, shouting. Shots rang out, but the falling snow and distance made them wild. They made it into the forest just as Lin May's legs started to give out. Rourke half-carried her the last few yards, pulling her down behind a massive fallen log. "Stay down," he whispered. "Don't move. Don't breathe." They huddled there, pressed together, listening to the chaos behind them. The men were searching, spreading out, but the forest was huge and the snow was falling harder now, covering their tracks. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the sounds of pursuit faded. Rourke waited another 10 minutes before he moved. "We need to keep going. Put distance between us and them." "Where?" "There's a hunter's cache about 3 miles north. If we can make it there, we can hole up until they stop looking." Lin May nodded, too cold and scared to argue. They moved through the forest like ghosts, staying off the trails, avoiding open ground. Rourke's limp was getting worse. Lin May could see blood seeping through his pant leg. "You're hit." "Grazed. I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I said I'm fine." But his voice was tight with pain. They kept moving. The hunter's cache turned out to be a small dugout carved into a hillside, barely visible under the snow. Rourke pulled aside the branches covering the entrance and ushered Lin May inside. It was tiny, dark, cold, but it was shelter. Rourke collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. In the dim light filtering through the entrance, Lin May could see his face was pale. "Let me see the leg." "Later. First we need to—" "Now, Rourke." He didn't have the strength to argue. Lin May carefully pulled up his pant leg and bit back a curse. It wasn't a graze. The bullet had carved a furrow through the meat of his calf, deep enough that she could see muscle. "This needs stitches." Add it to the list. He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "There's a medical kit in the cache, under the floorboards." She found it, a tin box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were needles, thread, bandages, a bottle of whiskey, and some kind of powder she didn't recognize. "Sulfur powder," Rourke said when she held it up. "For infection. Pour it in the wound, bandage it tight. The stitches can wait." Lin May did as he said, trying not to think about how much it must hurt. Rourke didn't make a sound, just bit down on a piece of leather and let her work. When she was done, they sat in silence, listening to the wind howl outside. "The cabin," Lin May said eventually, "everything we had. It's just stuff. We're alive. That's what matters." "Where do we go now?" Rourke was quiet for a long moment. "The governor. Like we should have done from the start. We can't fight Crow alone. We need someone with real power on our side. That's a week's ride in good conditions. I know. You can barely walk. I'll manage. Lin Mei looked at him, this stubborn, damaged man who'd thrown his life away for a principle. For her. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. And don't give me the speech about Bitter Creek or doing the right thing. Why are you really doing this? Rourke met her eyes. In the shadows, his face looked younger, more vulnerable. Because for the first time in 10 years, I feel like my life means something, he said. Because you look at me like I'm a person, not a monster. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to want to be better than I am. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. Because I'm half in love with you, and I don't know when that happened, but it did. The confession hit her like a physical blow. Lin Mei couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of those words settling into her chest like stones. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do. You barely know me. I know enough. His hand cupped her cheek. I know you're brave. I know you're stubborn. I know you stayed when you could have run, fought when you could have hidden. I know you look at a world that's tried to break you and you spit in its eye. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I know that when I thought they might take you, it felt like dying. Lin Mei's eyes burned. I'm not worth dying for. Let me decide that. She kissed him. She didn't plan to, didn't think about it, just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, desperate and clumsy and more honest than anything she'd ever done. Rourke made a sound, surprise or relief, or maybe both, and kissed her back. His hand slid into her hair, her fingers gripped his shirt. For a moment the world narrowed to just this, warmth in the cold, connection in the chaos, something good in all the violence. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Rourke rested his forehead against hers. We're going to survive this, he said. I swear to you. We're going to make it to the capital, we're going to expose Crow, and we're going to build a life, a real one, together. Lin Mei wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. Promise me something, she said. Anything. If it comes down to you or me, if Crow gives you a choice, you save yourself. You don't throw your life away for mine. I can't promise that. Rourke, I will never choose my life over yours. Never. So don't ask me to. He kissed her again, gentle this time. We both make it out, or neither of us does. That's the deal. Before Lin Mei could respond, a sound outside made them both go silent. Voices. Close. Too close. Rourke grabbed his rifle and moved to the entrance, peering through the branches. How many? Lin Mei whispered. 4. Maybe 5. Tracking us. Her blood turned to ice. They found our trail. Not yet. They're searching grid pattern. But they will find it if we stay here. Can we run? He looked at his injured leg, then at her. The answer was obvious. You run, he said. I'll draw them off. Head northwest, follow the creek bed until you hit the old mining road. Take that east toward... No. Lin Mei, no. She grabbed her own rifle and checked the load. You said we both make it out or neither of us does, so we fight. Together. Rourke looked like he wanted to argue, but outside the voices were getting closer. Fine, he said, but you do exactly what I say. Understood? Understood. They waited, barely breathing, as the footsteps crunched closer through the snow. Spread out, someone called. Carson's voice. They can't have gotten far in this storm. Maybe they froze, another voice suggested. Then we find the bodies. Crow wants proof. Lin Mei and Rourke exchanged a look. There was no talking their way out of this, no negotiating. It was kill or be killed. The first man walked past the cache entrance without seeing it, then the second. The third one stopped. Lin Mei could see his boots through the branches, not 3 feet away, could hear him breathing, could practically feel him looking at the hillside, trying to figure out why it seemed off. He took a step closer. Rourke fired through the branches. The man went down screaming. All hell broke loose. Rourke kicked aside the branches and rolled out, firing as he moved. Lin May followed, her rifle bucking against her shoulder as she pulled the trigger again and again. Two men dropped. A third took cover behind a tree, returning fire. Bullets tore through the branches over Lin May's head. She dropped to the ground, crawled sideways, came up in a new position, and fired. The man behind the tree jerked and fell. Silence. Lin May's ears rang. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the rifle. "Clear," Rourke said. He was on his feet, limping, checking the bodies. "All down." "Is Carson here?" A voice from above. They both looked up. Carson was on the hillside, 30 feet up, rifle aimed directly at Rourke's chest. "Drop it, Hale." Rourke's rifle was empty. He'd used his last round on the man behind the tree. "I said drop it." The rifle fell into the snow. Carson started climbing down, keeping his weapon trained on Rourke the whole time. "You've been a real pain in the ass, you know that? Mr. Crow offered you a fortune, offered you a way out, but you just couldn't let it go." "Let what go? My wife? My home? My life?" "Your pride." Carson was on level ground now, maybe 10 feet away. "That's all this ever was. Your pride against Mr. Crow's money. And guess what? Money wins. It always wins." Lin May still had her rifle, but it was pointed at the ground and Carson hadn't noticed she was armed. If she moved too fast, he'd shoot Rourke. If she moved too slow, he'd shoot them both. "Walk away, Carson," Rourke said. "You've got 4 dead men here. You think Crow's going to be happy about that? Cut your losses and go." "Can't do that. Got my orders." Carson's finger tightened on the trigger. "Nothing personal, Hale. Just business." Lin May raised her rifle and fired in one smooth motion. The shot took Carson in the chest. He looked down at the spreading red stain, surprised, and then collapsed. The rifle fell from Lin May's hands. Her legs gave out. She sat down hard in the snow and stared at what she'd done. She'd killed a man. Not almost. Not maybe. Actually killed him. Rourke was beside her in an instant, pulling her against his chest. "It's okay. You're okay. I killed him. You saved my life. I killed him." She couldn't stop saying it, couldn't stop seeing the surprise on Carson's face as he realized he was dying. "Lin May, look at me." Rourke gripped her shoulders. "You did what you had to do. He would have killed us both. You understand that? He gave you no choice." I know, but I..." She couldn't finish. Couldn't get the words past the knot in her throat. Rourke held her while she shook, held her until the adrenaline crash passed and she could breathe again. Finally, voice rough, he said, "We need to move. More will come. Can you walk?" Lin May nodded, stood on legs that felt like water. Let Rourke steady her. They left the bodies where they fell and disappeared into the storm. 3 days later, half frozen and barely conscious, they stumbled into a way station 20 miles from the territorial capital. The station master took one look at them, blood-soaked, frostbitten, armed, and reached for his shotgun. "Easy," Rourke said, holding up his hands. "We're not here to cause trouble. We need horses and safe passage to the capital. We can pay." "The hell happened to you two?" "Victor Crow happened, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." The station master studied them for a long moment. Then he lowered his shotgun. "You'll want to see Governor Harrison then. Man's been looking for an excuse to bring Crow down for years." He jerked his head toward the back. "Get yourselves cleaned up. I'll arrange the horses. But you didn't hear it from me." That night, sleeping in an actual bed for the first time in a week, Lin May dreamed of blood in the snow and men falling and the weight of the rifle in her hands. She woke to find Rourke watching her from the chair by the window. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Keeping watch. Old habit." She sat up, pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "What happens when we get to the capital?" "We tell the governor everything, show him the evidence, force him to act. And if he doesn't, then we've got nothing left to lose." Rourke's expression was grim. "But I think he will. Harrison's been trying to check Crow's power for years. We just gave him the ammunition he needs." "What if it's not enough?" "Then we keep fighting. We expose Crow in every newspaper from here to Washington. We make so much noise he can't bury it." He crossed to the bed, sat beside her. "One way or another, this ends. I promise you that. Lin May took his hand. I'm scared. Me too. But you never show it. Doesn't mean I don't feel it. He squeezed her fingers. I'm terrified, Lin May. Terrified of failing you, of getting you killed, of everything we've been through being for nothing. It's not for nothing. Whatever happens, it's not for nothing. She leaned her head against his shoulder. We stood up. We fought back. That matters. Yeah, Rourke said quietly. It does. They sat like that until dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow gold and pink and promising nothing except another day to keep fighting. And somehow, that was enough. The territorial capital was nothing like Red Hollow. Where the frontier town had been all raw wood and mud streets, the capital sprawled across a valley with actual paved roads, brick buildings that stood 3 stories tall, and enough people that you could walk for blocks without seeing the same face twice. Lin May had never seen anything like it. Even through her exhaustion and fear, she couldn't help staring. Stay close, Rourke said, one hand on her elbow as they navigated the crowded boardwalk. His limp was worse today. The bandage on his leg needed changing. But he moved like a man on a mission, cutting through the crowd with single-minded purpose. The governor's mansion sat on a hill overlooking the rest of the city. It wasn't quite as grand as Lin May had imagined, more functional than ostentatious, but it still made her feel small, dirty, out of place. 2 guards stood at the gate, rifles slung across their backs. State your business, one of them said, not unkindly. Rourke hailed to see Governor Harrison. It's urgent. The guard looked them over. Their trail-worn clothes, the visible weapons, Rourke's blood-stained pant leg, and his expression shifted from bored to wary. The governor doesn't take unscheduled appointments. He'll take this one. Tell him it's about Victor Crow. Something flickered across the guard's face. Recognition. Maybe concern. Wait here. He disappeared inside. The other guard kept his hand near his rifle, watching them like they might bolt or attack at any moment. Lin May shifted her weight from foot to foot, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. What if the governor refused to see them? What if he was in Crow's pocket like Sheriff Denton? What if they'd come all this way for nothing? The first guard returned. Governor will see you, but you leave your weapons with us. Rourke hesitated. Lin May could see him calculating, weighing trust against survival instinct. Finally, he unbuckled his gun belt and handed it over. Lin May did the same with her rifle. This way. They were led through halls that smelled of wood polish and old paper, past offices where clerks hunched over desks, past a library that held more books than Lin May had seen in her entire life. Finally, they reached a door at the end of a long corridor. The guard knocked. Mr. Hale and Mrs. Hale, sir. Send them in. Governor Marcus Harrison was a lean man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and believed too little. He stood behind a massive desk covered in documents, a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose. Mr. Hale. He gestured to 2 chairs. Please, sit. You look like you've been through hell. That's one way to put it. Rourke sat with visible relief. Lin May took the chair beside him. Harrison removed his glasses and studied them. My secretary tells me you're here about Victor Crow. That's a name I haven't heard in about 6 months. I was starting to hope he'd relocated to Canada or died in his sleep. He's very much alive, and he's been terrorizing the territory unchecked for years. I'm aware. I'm also aware that proving anything against a man with Crow's resources is nearly impossible. Harrison leaned back in his chair. So what makes you think you've got something I can use? Rourke laid it out methodically. The forged contract, the attack on his cabin, the dead men, Carson's admission that he was following Crow's orders. Everything. Harrison listened without interrupting, his expression giving nothing away. When Rourke finished, the governor was quiet for a long moment. You have proof of any of this? He asked finally. We have the bodies. We have witnesses at the way station who saw us come in half dead. We have Sheriff Denton's documentation of the first attack filed before the second one happened. Denton. Harrison's mouth twisted. That spineless bastard's been on Crow's payroll for years. His testimony's worthless. Then arrest him too. Rourke leaned forward. Governor, I know you've been trying to bring Crow down. The station master told me. Everyone knows it. We're handing you everything you need. Multiple murders, attempted kidnapping, forgery, arson. Enough charges to bury him for life. And he'll claim self-defense, that you attacked his men, that you stole his bride. Harrison shook his head. Crow didn't get where he is by being stupid. He'll have covered his tracks, paid off witnesses, built himself a dozen alibis. Lin May felt her heart sink. They'd come all this way, risked everything, and it wasn't going to matter. So you're saying there's nothing you can do? She asked quietly. Harrison looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they'd entered. I didn't say that. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the city. I said proving it in court will be nearly impossible, but there are other ways to break a man like Crow. What kind of ways? Public ones, loud ones. Harrison turned back to face them. Crow's power comes from two sources, his money and his reputation. People are afraid of him, but fear only works in the shadows. Drag everything into the light, make enough noise that the territorial press picks it up, and suddenly he's not untouchable anymore. You want us to go public, Rourke said. I want you to tell your story. Every newspaper between here and Denver, every public forum. Make Crow defend himself in the court of public opinion while I work the legal angles. Harrison's eyes gleamed. You cost him his reputation, I'll cost him his freedom. Between the two, we might actually bring him down. He'll come after us, Lin May said. The moment we go public, he'll send Keller or someone worse. Not if you're under my protection. I can assign marshals to guard you, keep you safe while this plays out. Rourke and Lin May exchanged a look. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even particularly good, but it was something. When do we start? Rourke asked. Harrison smiled. It was a hard smile, a politician's smile. How do you feel about talking to the Denver Chronicle tomorrow morning? The interview ran 3 days later under the headline, Frontier Bride Escapes Land Baron's Web of Violence. Lin May read it in the governor's parlor, sitting in a chair that was too soft and wearing a borrowed dress that didn't fit right. The words looked strange on paper, her words, but cleaned up, made dramatic, turned into a story that people would consume with their morning coffee. They made Crow sound like a villain from a dime novel, she said. Good. Rourke sat across from her, his leg propped up on the stool. A doctor had finally looked at it, stitched it properly, declared he was lucky it hadn't gotten infected. Let people see him that way. Let them be horrified. The article spread like wildfire. Within a week, it had been picked up by papers in 3 states. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview the mountain man who'd stood up to Victor Crow. Everyone wanted to hear Lin May's story. The governor's office was flooded with letters, some supportive, some calling them liars, most just curious. And true to Harrison's word, Crow was forced to respond. His statement came out in the Red Hollow Gazette, written in his usual measured tone. He claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that he'd merely tried to collect on a legitimate debt, that Rourke Hale was a known criminal who'd attacked his employees without provocation. But the article included something else, a sidebar written by a journalist who'd done some digging. It listed 3 other women who'd disappeared after getting into disputes with Crow over debts or land. 2 were never found. 1 turned up dead 6 months later. The official cause ruled as suicide despite evidence suggesting otherwise. The article asked questions, drew connections, suggested patterns. Crow's carefully constructed image started to crack. Lin May watched it happen from the relative safety of the governor's mansion, where they'd been staying in a guest suite under constant guard. It felt surreal, like watching a storm from behind glass. Do you think it's working? She asked Rourke one evening. I think we've got him on his heels. Whether that's enough? He trailed off, staring into the fire crackling in the hearth. I don't know. 2 weeks after the first article ran, Governor Harrison called them into his office. We've got him, he said without preamble. Territorial judge just issued a warrant for Crow's arrest. Multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted kidnapping, and fraud. He's being taken into custody as we speak. Lin May felt the tension she'd been carrying for months suddenly release. She grabbed Rourke's hand. It's over? The arrest is done. The trial's another matter. Harrison shuffled through papers on his desk. But I've got 3 witnesses willing to testify about Crow's past activities. We've got the bodies from your cabin attack, And we've got your testimony. It's not airtight, but it's solid. When's the trial? Rourke asked. 3 weeks. Judge wants to move fast before Crow's lawyers can bury us in motions. Harrison looked at them. You'll both need to testify, and I won't lie to you. It's going to be brutal. Crow's attorney is going to tear into every detail of your story. Your past, your marriage, your actions. They're going to try to make you look like liars or criminals or both. Let them try, Lin May said. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I'm not afraid of him anymore. The trial was held in the capital's courthouse, a stone building that seemed designed to intimidate. The courtroom was packed, standing room only, with the journalists filling the back rows and curious citizens craning for a view. Victor Crow sat at the defendant's table in an expensive suit, looking calm and confident, like this was all just a minor inconvenience that would soon be sorted out. Lin May testified first. She walked to the witness stand with her head up and her hands steady, and she told her story. All of it. The wedding she didn't want. The debt she didn't owe. The men who came to kill them in the night. The bodies in the snow. Crow's attorney, a sharp-faced man named Thornton, cross-examined her for 3 hours. Mrs. Hale, isn't it true that you willingly married Mr. Hale in exchange for money? I married him because I had no choice. My father sold me to pay his debts. But you signed the marriage license voluntarily, didn't you? I signed it to avoid a worse fate. That's not the same as volunteering. And yet here you are, still married to Mr. Hale. If you were so opposed to the arrangement, why haven't you sought an annulment? Lin May looked Thornton in the eye. Because somewhere along the way, my husband became the first person in my life who treated me like I mattered, who asked what I wanted, who stood between me and a man who thought he could buy me like livestock. Her voice didn't waver. I stay because I choose to. That's the difference. The courtroom murmured. Rourke testified next. He recounted the attacks, the threats, Carson's admission. He was calm and factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. Thornton tried to rattle him. Mr. Hale, you're a known isolate with a violent past. You've killed 3 men previous to this incident, correct? In self-defense, all documented. And yet you claim Mr. Crow's men attacked you unprovoked. Isn't it more likely that you, a man with a history of violence, instigated these confrontations? I was in my home with my wife when 6 armed men surrounded my cabin and opened fire. Which part of that sounds like I started it? Perhaps the part where you'd already stolen Mr. Crow's intended bride, and I didn't steal anyone. Rourke's voice went cold. I paid a legal debt. Your client tried to kidnap my wife and murder me when I wouldn't hand her over. Those are facts, not opinions. The trial lasted 8 days. 8 days of testimony and cross-examination and evidence presentation. 8 days of watching Crow sit there looking untouchable while his lawyers tried to twist reality into something else. But the bodies didn't lie. The bullet holes in Rourke's cabin didn't lie. The station master's testimony about their condition when they arrived didn't lie. And when 3 other women stepped forward to testify about their own experiences with Crow's coercion and violence, things that had happened years ago but never been reported, because who would believe them against a man with that much power? The tide turned. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, Lin May was gripping Rourke's hand so tight her fingers ached. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of attempted kidnapping? Guilty. On the charge of fraud? Guilty. Victor Crow's face went white. For the first time since this whole thing started, he looked genuinely shocked. The judge, a severe woman named Blackwell, who'd presided with iron authority, didn't smile. Mr. Crow, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison. You will forfeit all assets obtained through illegal means, which will be redistributed to your victims as the court sees fit, and you will never again hold public office or business license in this territory. She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Lin May couldn't hear over the noise, couldn't process what had just happened, could only feel Rourke's arms around her, holding her up as her legs went weak. They'd won. Against every odd, against all logic, they'd actually won. Outside the courthouse, journalists mobbed them with questions. Lin May let Rourke handle most of it, too overwhelmed to form coherent sentences. But one question cut through the noise. "Mrs. Hale, what's next for you and your husband?" Lin May looked at Rourke. He looked back at her, one eyebrow raised in question. "We're going home," she said. "We're rebuilding, and we're living our lives the way we choose." It was the truest thing she'd ever said. They left the capital a week later after the legal paperwork was sorted, and the death threats from Crow's remaining supporters had died down. Governor Harrison walked them to their horses personally. "You did a brave thing," he said, shaking Rourke's hand. "Most people would have run. You stood and fought. Didn't feel brave at the time. Felt like the only option. But that's usually when real bravery happens." Harrison turned to Lin May. "And you, Mrs. Hale, you've changed things here. Those 3 women who testified, they've inspired others to come forward. We're opening investigations into a dozen cases that were previously considered closed. You've given people hope that the system can work." Lin May didn't know what to say to that. She settled for a nod. They rode north under clear skies, taking their time, stopping at way station and small towns where people recognized them from the papers. Some offered free rooms, some offered food. One old woman pressed a hand-stitched quilt into Lin May's hands and said, "For your new home, when you rebuild." The cabin, when they finally reached it, was worse than Lin May remembered. The walls were pocked with bullet holes. 2 windows were still boarded up. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Snow had gotten inside through the broken roof, melting into puddles that had frozen and refrozen until the floor was warped. It looked like a war zone, like something that couldn't be saved. Rourke stood in the doorway, surveying the damage with an unreadable expression. "We can rebuild," Lin May said quietly. "It'll take time, but we can—" "No." He turned to her. "We can't rebuild this. Not exactly like it was." Her heart sank. "You want to leave?" "I want to build something new." He took her hands. "This cabin was my hiding place, where I came to be alone, to avoid the world. But that's not what I need anymore. What we need." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm thinking bigger. A real house. Room for a family, if that's something you want. Space for a life that's more than just surviving." Lin May felt tears prick her eyes. "You're talking about a future." "Yeah, I am." He pulled her close. "A real one. With you, if you'll have it." "You're an idiot if you think I'd say no after everything we've been through." He laughed, actually laughed, and kissed her in the ruins of his old life, in the space where their new one would begin. They spent the spring rebuilding, not just the cabin, but everything. Rourke's sister sent money when she heard about the trial, enough to buy proper lumber and hire help. 2 men from town came up to assist, drawn by the story and the promise of steady pay. Together, they tore down what couldn't be saved and built something better in its place. Lin May learned carpentry out of necessity. She wasn't good at it, kept hitting her thumb with the hammer and cutting boards crooked, but she kept trying, kept improving. "You're getting better," Rourke said one afternoon, examining a shelf she'd built. "It's leaning. Only a little. Give it time. Everything with you is give it time, because time's the only thing that fixes most problems." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her head. "We've got plenty of it now. Might as well use it right." By summer, the new house was finished. It was bigger than the cabin, brighter, with real glass windows and a porch wide enough for chairs where you could sit and watch the sunset. Lin May had insisted on a proper kitchen. Rourke had insisted on a second floor with actual bedrooms. They'd compromised on everything else. The day they moved in, Lin May stood in the main room and tried not to cry. "It's perfect," she said. "It's crooked in about 6 places and that door sticks. It's still perfect." That night they christened the new house properly, and afterward, lying in a bed they'd built together, in a room with walls they'd raised with their own hands, Lin May felt something she'd been chasing her whole life without knowing it: peace. News filtered up from the territory throughout the summer. Crow's business empire was being dismantled piece by piece. His associates were being investigated. Sheriff Denton had been removed from office and was facing charges of his own. The governor had appointed a new territorial judge with instructions to clean house. Change was slow. messy, imperfect, but it was happening. Thomas Carter wrote once, a short letter, barely a page, apologizing again and asking if she'd ever be willing to see him. Lin May didn't answer. Maybe someday she would. Maybe someday the anger would fade enough to make room for forgiveness. But not yet. Fall came with the first snow, and with it, a realization that sent Lin May into town to see the doctor. She was pregnant. She sat with the knowledge for 3 days before telling Rourke, trying to figure out how she felt about it, scared mostly, excited underneath the fear, uncertain about whether she was ready to bring a child into a world that had tried so hard to break her. But when she finally told him, standing in the kitchen while he was making dinner, the look on his face erased every doubt. "You're sure?" he asked. "The doctor's sure. I'm about 8 weeks along." Rourke set down the knife he was holding, crossed to her, and pulled her into his arms. She felt him shaking. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm terrified." His voice was rough, and happier than I've been in my entire life, both at the same time. That's about where I'm at, too. They stood there in the fading light, holding each other, and Lin May thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. The wedding she didn't want, the man she'd been forced to marry, the violence and fear and desperate gambles that could have ended a dozen different ways. And she realized something that felt important. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing in your life. Not because the bad thing was good, or because suffering builds character, or any of that philosophical nonsense people spouted to make themselves feel better, but because how you respond to the worst thing, who you choose to be in the aftermath, that's what matters. She could have let fear win, could have run, or hidden, or broken under the weight of it all. Instead, she'd fought. She'd stood her ground. She'd chosen courage over comfort and defiance over submission. And Rourke had chosen the same, had looked at a world that told him violence and isolation were his only options, and decided to risk everything for something better. Neither of them was perfect. They were both damaged, both carrying scars that would never fully heal. They still fought sometimes, still had days where the weight of what they'd survived pressed down too hard. But they were here, together, building something that was theirs and no one else's. That winter, Lin May gave birth to a daughter during a blizzard that trapped them in the house for 3 days. Rourke delivered the baby himself with shaking hands and a prayer he didn't believe in, and when he placed the screaming infant in Lin May's arms, she looked down at her daughter's red face and thought, This is what I fought for." They named her Sarah, after Rourke's mother. And when spring came again, when the snow melted and the world turned green, they carried Sarah out onto the porch and showed her the mountains that would be her home. "What do you think she'll be?" Lin May asked, watching the baby sleep in Rourke's arms. "Free," he said without hesitation. "Whatever else she is, she'll be free to choose." It was, Lin May thought, the best inheritance they could give her. Years later, people would still talk about the trial, about the mountain man and the bride who took down Victor Crow. The story would grow in the telling, acquire embellishments and mythology until it barely resembled what actually happened. But Lin May didn't care about the story everyone else told. She cared about the one she lived, the one where she woke up every morning next to a man who'd chosen her, in a house they'd built together, in a life she'd fought for with everything she had. The one where her daughter grew up strong and stubborn and afraid of nothing. The one where she learned that freedom wasn't something given to you. It was something you took, something you defended, something you built, piece by piece, choice by choice, until it became as solid as the ground beneath your feet. And on quiet nights, when the wind howled through the pines and the world outside seemed dangerous and vast, Lin May would sit by the fire with Rourke's hand in hers and remember. Remember the girl she'd been, walking down that aisle, believing she was headed toward her doom. Remember the moment everything changed, the gentle touch of a forehead against hers, the first crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Remember choosing to stay when she could have run, choosing to fight when hiding would have been easier, choosing love when survival would have been enough. Those choices had cost her, had scarred her, had nearly killed her more than once, but they'd also saved her. Not from danger. There was no such thing as safety in this world, not really, but from becoming someone she couldn't live with, from letting fear make her small, from believing that she deserved less than everything, and that, Lin May understood now, was worth every scar. Outside, the snow fell soft and steady, covering the mountains in white. Inside, the fire crackled warm. Sarah slept upstairs in her crib. Rourke dozed in the chair beside Lin May, his hand still holding hers even in sleep. It wasn't a perfect life. It wasn't an easy life. But it was hers. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.